Friend Sachin Kamath. I'm back after a gap of 2 months, and today I'll be discussing a very interesting topic with you, which is called money supply. Let's get started. So, this morning I was thinking, what the hell is going on here? So, COVID 19 restrictions are still on. Uh, there are airlines are not working, the tourism industry is down, hospitality, food industry, everything is severely affected. America China trade deal is not yet done. There are so many geopolitical uncertainties. For example, there was a border skirmish between India and China. There are tensions going on in the South China Sea between USA and China, or even Australia and China. There are so many geopolitical uncertainties. There are so many economical uncertainties, and the exact impact of all of these nobody is able to predict. And yet, all of the benchmark indexes are been like going up. They are making higher highs every day. In fact, S&P 500 is at all-time high. So what the hell is going on? And I tried to search an answer for this question, and the only answer comes to my mind is it's just purely money supply. So let's see what the money supply is. Money supply is nothing but like the total amount of currency and other liquid financial products in an economy. What it means is like to run an economy, you will be using a mode. For example, fiat currency is the mode that you use to transfer value from one person to another. And what is the how much amount of this money is in the system right now? Take an example. uh, the basic case of a money supply, what the basic measure is called as M0. M0 is nothing but the total amount of hard currency cash that is running through the economy. M1 is M0, which is hard currency plus currency in bank reserves as well as in checking accounts. Now, the currency in bank reserves and in checking accounts, both of these things are illiquid, which is like the consumers have to withdraw that money to spend it. But for the sake of argument, how much money is in the system, you can consider that along with hard currency, that is known as M1. And M2 is an even broader indicator that encompasses everything that N1 has to offer, plus it also includes the savings and fixed deposits that the people of this country have made. So M2 in general, there are other measures as well, M3 and M4, but M2 is gives you a very good idea of how much money is there in the system. Now, fortunately or unfortunately, the amount of money available within the economy can be altered by central banks or some institutions like US Federal Reserve. How do they do that? They have various options at their discretion. They can do is like they can increase or decrease short-term interest rates, and lower the interest rates is equal to higher the money supply. Simple reason being like when the interest rates are down, more businesses will be willing to borrow as they don't have to pay back as much of the interest, and then banks also will be willing to lend more because they would be earning more on their lendings rather than on the treasury bills. So it works both ways, and ultimately the thing is like the money supply will increase within an economy. Now the converse is also true, which is to say if the central bank decides to raise the interest rates, they will manage to suck out money out of the economy, and money supply will be reduced. The other option the central banks have is they can go to open markets and buy government bonds. Either they can buy directly from banks, in that case banks will receive cash, and banks reserves will go up. So now the banks have certain norms of how much money they can lend, and it generally is the case that if the bank's reserves are higher, they can lend more. It is directly proportional to their reserves. So the effect happens this is like when the government when the Federal Reserve goes and buys bonds from the open market, either the bank gets cash, or because of the action of Federal Reserve, the price of their reserves, the price of their treasuries goes up, and in turn they are allowed to lend more, and that increases money supply in the market. This has further ripple effects as that money gets multiplied again. So let's not go there, but it definitely it can increase money supply. And the third option they have is to come up with some policies, and within these policies they can either raise or they can lower the reserve requirements. So as stated earlier, if the banks have less reserve requirements, that means they can lend more against the same amount of reserves. So this also creates a effect of increasing money supply within the system. Now, to see like how much really is the money printed by all the central banks due to this COVID-19. And I was amazed to see this graph that the first place definitely there is United States, and United States Federal Reserve has increased their balance sheet by approximately 3.5 trillions of dollars within the last 3 months. Now compare this to the total size of their balance sheet, which is around 7 or 7.5 trillions. So almost half of that money has been pumped in just previously few months. Now, the percentages are like in terms of their GDP, but still, US in terms of its GDP, they have pumped in really 13.2% of their GDP. Compare that to India. India has managed to pump in $30 billion, and which is part of 6.9% of the GDP. All the other countries followed the suit, and as you can see from Brazil, Australia, China, everybody has made provision for this COVID-19 to increase the money supply. Thing is normal. Uh, the result of this higher money supply is basically it gives a sort of a nudge to the economy for it to grow. Uh, if there is no major disaster going through the economy, normally what should happen is that the bigger the money supply, the businesses will be willing to invest more just because they can borrow at cheaper rates, and because of that the consumers are handed out some of that money, and ultimately when the consumers get that money, their discretionary spending increases. They go on purchasing more goods, and to keep up the demand, the businesses from which they purchased, they have to hire more people, procure more raw material. In short, all this higher money supply, it trickles down gradually from the higher level players to the down at the end consumer. And generally, like everybody receives the money. There will be little inflation, but little inflation is good, and this is a sign of a healthy economy, that the money is being like rightly put into use. So this is what should happen under normal circumstances. There should be an inflation. Now the next question that immediately comes to my mind is like, why is the inflation missing under current circumstances? Because the central banks are printing so much of money. US has added like 3.5 trillions, but there is absolutely no signs of inflation in that country. Not even not just US, but the inflation is missing from India, China, all these countries who have provided stimulus to the economy. There is no inflation at all. Now why is that? I tried to search an answer. The answer seems to lie with this concept called velocity of money. So if the velocity of money is very, very less, then even if you increase money supply dramatically, it does not affect inflation. Let's see how. So the formula happens to be like MV is equal to PY, where M is like money supply, V is velocity of money, P is price, and Y is GDP. Let's take an example. Let's assume there is a town, and there are four different people living in the town. There is one restaurant owner, there is a shopkeeper, there is a farmer, and there is a laborer. One fine day, the restaurant owner goes to shopkeeper and he buys groceries. He hands over 100 rupees to the shopkeeper. The shopkeeper in turn goes to a farmer the very same day, and he buys produce from farmer because he has to replenish his shop, and he hands over the same 100 rupees bill to the farmer. The farmer was waiting for money, and once he gets 100 rupees, what he does is he pays wages to his laborer, and he hands over the same 100 rupees bill to the laborer. Laborer is happy that he has received his wages on time. In fact, he decides to do a party. So he goes, for the sake of this argument, let's say he goes to the exactly the same restaurant owner in our first scenario. So the laborer goes there and he hands over 100 rupees bill to the restaurant owner. He eats to its heart content, and yeah, and then that money has been like returned to the restaurant owner. Now you see what has happened here. These four parties, they have exchanged goods. The total value of the goods they have exchanged is actually 400 rupees. So restaurant owner, everybody bought something that is worth 100 rupees. Total value of the goods is 400 rupees. But in fact, they use just 100 rupees bill to do all this exchange. What it means is like they spend 400 but using the same 100 rupees bill. So in here, in this case, velocity of money is 400 by 100, which is 4. It's an interesting thing that has happened here. The velocity of money is so high that within the same day, the same 100 rupees bill can actually cater to 400 rupees worth of goods. So higher the money supply is, higher the velocity of money. It's always a good sign of a healthy economy. But during COVID-19, is the economy really healthy? What really is happening at the current scenario, at the current during the economic crisis of this COVID-19? What really is happening with that additional money supply that the central bank has given? Due to this pandemic, everybody is uncertain of their future. So restaurant owner in our previous example, he is not very certain that many people are going to come to his restaurant. He knows that this is going to last for at least 3 to 6 months. What he decides is that whenever I'll receive a money, instead of buying more things, I will try to save this money. Same is the case with shopkeeper. He is not sure that the restaurant owner is going to come to his shop to buy more goods. He knows that very well. He also decides that whenever I receive money, I'll try to save it. Same is the case with farmer and laborer. Laborer is unsure of his job, and farmer is unsure of what price he is going to get for his produce. Everybody decides to save the money. So when the central bank gives away, when the gives away this money, when they increase the money supply, the money ultimately lands into these people's hands. But except for the previous example, instead of spending that money, they all of them, they try to save that money. Now there is, everybody also knows this trick, that because the money supply is increased, the interest rates have decreased. That means they are not going to get much from a fixed deposit or from keeping that money into bank. So they go to stock market. Basically, they know that the mutual funds are going to give them higher returns. So everybody in this case, whenever they get money, they start investing into mutual funds. Mutual funds are nothing but a bunch of managers buying stocks. And it so happens that at particular point of time, there is one favored sector in the stock exchange, and almost all the mutual funds are increasing exposure to that particular sector. In this simple scenario, you can see that immediately that particular sector within the stock exchange will go up. And once this starts happening, many other people see that. They see that the prices of stock are increasing. They are also uncertain of their future. There are people who are genuinely willing to save for their future, so they turn to mutual funds. Also, there are some opportunistic people. They know that something of this sort is happening. They want to jump in and they want to get back their money as soon as they can. So more and more people start investing this way. So the money supply that is increased is actually going and chasing just one particular asset. What will happen is that this price of this particular asset will increase. It will inflate like anything. So in this particular example, I have taken stock exchange. But in 2008 US subprime crisis, all the people were happened to chase the real estate. So there, that time the bubble was in real estate, and now the bubble is getting created in stock prices. The stock prices are inflating, and at some point of time, the bubble just keeps on getting bigger. There is no way out of it. The people who are trapped within it, they want more money, and there are some other people who have jumped later on, so they are still waiting for their money to grow. So this is the simple explanation of why stock prices are increasing at this point of time when there is so much uncertainty within the world. Now this increased bubble has to pop at certain point of time. The timing of this bubble popping, nobody can predict. So what really can you do? Uh, you really have like two options, it seems. You can either join the party, get inside that bubble, hope that the bubble will inflate further for next 6 months, and within the 6 months you make some big amount of money. You take that money away and you are good. That is one option. Second option is stay away. Now, by staying away, you can do two things. You can either like completely save your money, put that in a savings bank account as a cash. That is one way. The other thing that you can do is like split the money between bonds and stocks, or between debt and equity. So if you ask me what you can do right now, I would go for this third option, wherein you can split the money, and the other thing you can do is like wait for the longer term, because within 5 to 10 years you will get an opportunity where the stock bubble has burst and now the prices of stocks are normal, so you can shift your money from bonds to stocks at that particular time. So that was my presentation. Thank you very much, and let me know your feedback on my channel. Thank you.